frequent listeners of my podcast, thank you so much for following my entries and for continuing to listen. You might know that I talk a lot about various DC and Marvel films and TV shows and things of that nature. That is where a lot of my favoritism lies. I try to drift away from a lot of that stuff as much as I possibly can, but they keep coming out with content, and I keep wanting to talk about it. So we're going to talk about The Long Halloween Part 2, which is another entry in the new universe setup for the DC animated universe that they're building that I've spoken about many times on this podcast. And this is Part 2, the second entry to the film that came out at the beginning of the month, or even closer to last month, I actually think. Part 1 was. So these two stories combined to make one whole story, and I think it would have been good to just combine them and just make one long movie, but I know that there's like a restriction to the animated films. They can't make them like longer than 90 minutes or something. So even though this is split into two, it does help build up what they're building for the new Batman in this universe. So various things like the growth of Harvey Dent becoming Two-Face is involved a lot deeper in the second film. It also goes a lot deeper into other characters and lore within the Batman universe that's already set up here in these two films. So they do a lot in two films to recreate Batman for the new timeline. The one thing I will have to say is a definite, I guess, a point I don't enjoy is that it doesn't have as much action in this one as the first one. And granted, it is an animated, film. To me, like, all of their films have a certain balance between the action and the good storytelling. And I'm going to say this until it gets proven wrong. All of the DC animated films have the best storytelling out of all DC content that's out there right now. The Arrowverse that they have on CW is pretty good, but, a lot of that could be, long-winded and made into more than it needs to be because of all the limitations they have from certain characters and whatnot. But when it comes to the DCAU, they are such good. The writing team has such a good grasp of this universe that the storytelling is impeccable. And between these two films, yes, the stories are impeccable. What it's telling between the first and second film, not only as the idea of, okay, Batman kind of exists already, but he's still kind of learning the ropes. Like, it's kind of in the middle of, say, like, his tenure. Like, if Batman is around for 20 years, this is around, like, year 5, this story, from what you kind of pick up on when it comes to his relationship and the number of villains and how far and deep certain villains go into. It does introduce a couple that aren't too big of a deal, like the Mad Hatter or Penguin. They get involved in there. Grundy has a bigger role in the second part than he did in the first part, and I knew that they were going to incorporate him more. They don't just introduce him to just kind of be in the sewers in the first one. He's going to play a big role. Some others that play a bigger role is Scarecrow gets involved. He plays a bigger role. The Joker is very dumbed down in this one in comparison to his role in the first part. So when it comes to the idea that these were two separate parts of a film, when you watch it together, it does make a bit more sense. But if you watch them separately, it's almost like, okay, why is Joker like a side character where he was like a main focal point in the first part? So that's just a little gripe that I might have had with certain storytelling elements. But even if you look past that, you have to see that when it comes to just pure storytelling, yes, this film has it, but it really lacks in a lot of its action. So there's really maybe a couple of fights, and we're talking like Batman isn't just about, good storytelling, he's also about excellent action and tremendous fighting, because he's an expert martial artist as well as being a detective. And where the first one focused a lot with an equal balance of detective and fighting and story, this one kind of focused more on detective and really deep into story and very minimal action. So that might be the only gripe I have with Part 2, is that there's really only one or two times where fighting is a big deal. And in comparison, let's give it a percentage. The first film has an equal balance. It's like 33% action, 33% detective, and then we'll say 34% storytelling. This one, it's like 50% storytelling, 30% detective, and then 20% action. So it's really lacking on that front. And again, if you put the two together and made it one full-length film, I think you would have gotten a better balance in that fashion. So doing this two-parter, I do get the wanting to tell this story with a good enough amount of time, so 2 parts is somewhat worth it. But I would rather see like a special edition come out that's the 2 stories combined. And I would have liked to have seen that full togetherness. And, I did watch them both, back to back. I'm not saying that I didn't. But when you're viewing it as just the normal, consumer, you're watching one, you're waiting a month, and you're watching the other. That's like you watch Inception up to the point where they get in the dream, stop, wait 2 months, and then pick right back up at the same point you left off. So it's weird to see these 2 aspects of this story split like that. But I do know that there's restrictions on the animated film series, and I wish they lifted those, and they gave them the ability to make these films like they should be Pixar films. These should be DreamWorks films. If the WB gave this studio that does the animated universe for the DC characters full range and released them as straight up 2 theaters releases, they would probably make a lot more money than any Justice League or Batman film ever will, because this animated universe is done so good, and they can't meddle with it. Let the actual team do it. They can make Pixar quality films if they took the chance, but for some reason they're not. So these are things that get released straight to streaming, straight to DVD, but I digress. This is a really good continuance of the story in and of itself that does leave a good twist, and it does wind up being a really good introduction for Batman in the new universe, like I said at the beginning of the entry. What I have to say is what I'm looking forward to as well is I do hope they keep Jensen Ackles as the voice acting for Batman, because they usually are pretty good with that. Whoever does the voice acting for a character usually sticks around to play that character throughout the rest of the films that he gets incorporated into. So whatever the next Batman film is, I hope Jensen Ackles is on board to do the voicing until they redo the universe again 25 movies later. I do, again, have to say as well that, my condolences go out to the families and loved ones of the actress Naya Rivera, who passed away last year. These were her last 2 recording roles, I believe, the voices she did for Catwoman for part 1 and 2. So yeah, it's unfortunate what happened to her. You can check out my other entry where I go a little bit deeper into that. And there's it's kind of sad to talk about that stuff, so I don't want to really dwell on that too much. It is very unfortunate, and it sucks because she does a really good job in these films too. So it's unfortunate, and my condolences. So let's go into what this means for the future again. We have a universe set up for the Batman. We have a universe set up for the Superman with the Man of Tomorrow film. And I do know that there's an end credit scene. And unfortunately, I was too interested in, wanting to watch it again together, the 2 films, that I didn't know there's actually a post-credit scene to this film. I don't remember there being one in the first one, and if there is one in the first one, I'm definitely going to have to go back and watch it, because I'm saying I watched these films 2 times already, both films, part 1 and 2. So there's apparently a post-credit film that does lead more into the universe as well. And again, we also have the Justice Society, which kind of set up the Flash in this universe as well. And I think we're supposed to be getting a Wonder Woman film by the end of the year. There's a 4th DC film that's meant to continue this universe and set up more closer to the end. I believe it's Wonder Woman. I'm not sure. I believe it. There's something coming out. I don't know. But another thing I do know is that what they're also doing, this studio is making another separate kind of universe story where they're going to be making the Injustice series animated. So the Injustice fighting games, the the first one and the second one, that storyline is going to be turned into an animated film as well. And I think this team has the backing and the quality control to make those really good too. So I know they're making that. I know there's another film by the end of the year, I believe. But yeah, we usually get 3 or 4 of these films a year. I believe we've only gotten 3 so far, so I'm expecting another one. And I'm just hoping that they continue just doing what they're doing and doing it well. And I hope nobody starts meddling with it. But I also hope that eventually, we're 25 films down the line, if they haven't gotten their Kickstarter to really try to make these bigger, then I don't think they ever will. But just go back. Go to the first couple of ones. Go to the Superman Unbound. Go to the Dark Knight Returns series. Go to the Justice League Doom movie. All the Justice League animated films. You're going to get so much better quality movies than anything DC's pushed out so far. And if you haven't yet, you could start here, or you can go back, and it's going to be enough content for you to sink your teeth into until we finally get to the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. And hopefully that's coming out soon, but I keep hearing different things. But it should be coming out soon, I hope. So definitely give this a shot. If you haven't seen the first one, give that a shot too. And check out my other entries where I talk more about the DCAU if you want to learn more about it.